no intention of boring you with all the details of my mastectomy and reconstruction. Suffice it to say that despite a couple of little glitches, it turned out okay. After a few days in the hospital, my friend Claudia, who had come from Salt Lake City to take care of me, she said, and another friend, Karen Locke, arrived at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica in Karen's husband's Rolls Royce to take me home in style. Barry and Diana Levinson treated me to my own private chef for 2 weeks, which was a very thoughtful gift. I'd forgotten her name, but she was a lovely woman in her 30s, and her food was amazing. The first week, she packed my freezer with the most delicious vegetarian dishes, all organic, of course. So Claudia and I ate very well indeed. The chef was due to deliver more delectable food just before the Easter weekend, but called me and said she had a bit of a conflict because Madonna, who lived in LA at that time, had asked her to prepare meals all weekend for her high-profile and famous guests. Well, since I obviously couldn't compete with Madge, I told the chef that the following week would be fine. I must say, and I've said it before, I felt very grateful for the kindness and caring of my lovely friends, old and new. Nothing was too much trouble. They were all amazing. However, there were 1 or 2 friends who let me down, which was surprising. I think in times of crisis, it can often happen when people close to us can't handle certain situations. They're more concerned with how they're affected and perhaps afraid that, in my case, the disease was catching. Oh, I know that sounds ridiculous, but fear can raise its ugly head in all shapes and sizes. You know, there are those people who run into a burning building to save a human being or an animal, and those who run away to save themselves. I like to think that I'm in the first category, and in fact have been in a few situations where my instinct to help has kicked in without a second thought to my own safety. I honestly didn't consider these to be particularly dangerous circumstances, but others did, and were more concerned with their own survival. What's wrong with being a good Samaritan, if that's what you want to call it? Some may say, lots. Yeah, I know. There are many stories of people who stepped in to help another in danger and have suffered for it. Is that the thought that goes through someone's head and stops them from acting to help another? Or is the instinct and drive so strong to act that thinking doesn't come into it? I'm not the kind of person to adopt a what-if attitude, because frankly, there's no point in it. I had a conversation with my brother recently on this very subject, and he told me that he'd once intervened when 2 men were beating up another man on the street. He'd seen them from his home office window, and immediately, without any thought to his own safety, ran towards the fight. Sufficiently intimidated by my brother's presence, the 2 men ran off, and the victim of the assault was saved. My brother then said how stupid it was that he ran into the middle of a fight, and he began to go down the what-if route, listing the possible dangerous consequences of his instinctual action. What if they'd had knives and stabbed me, for instance? Perhaps it is natural to imagine all the bad things that could have happened to us when we've done something risky, but why do that? And will it prevent us from helping others in the future? I believe that when we're driven to help another, whether a stranger in distress or a friend in need, an overpowering instinct of love kicks in. Or, to put it another way, it's a case of love thy neighbour as thyself. Wow, I got a little off track there. So time to change the subject. For a few years, I'd been involved in helping Barry Levinson put a script together on the very interesting life of the multi-talented singer Bobby Darin, who tragically died at the age of 37. Even though Warner Brothers had a deal with Barry to produce the film, unfortunately several other people were jumping on the Darin story bandwagon. So the project was put on hold while Barry went ahead with his other films. He then contacted me a few months after my surgery and asked if I could go to Northern California to work with him on revising the Bobby Darin script. Of course I said yes. It turned out, though, that sleazy James Toback, co-writer of Bugsy, and someone I've mentioned previously related to the #MeToo movement, was also going to be working on the script. We were both going to be staying at Barry's house in Ross. There was a lot of excitement amongst the female staff when I arrived, because apparently Johnny Depp was expected for a meeting with Barry that afternoon. He'd agreed to play the role of Bobby Darin, which I was slightly surprised about. I knew he was an accomplished musician and had his own band, but didn't know that he could sing. However, I had no doubt that he'd be able to channel his talents into emulating Darin. I was settled in the downstairs office at the other end of the house, reading through the latest version of the script when Johnny almost magically appeared. "Hi, I'm Johnny," he announced and stuck out his hand, which I shook. "Hi, I'm Marie," I answered back. "Nice to meet you." We were the only two in the room. Johnny looked around. "Barry will be here soon," I said. "I really need a ciggy. Is it somewhere I can smoke?" Mr. Depp asked. There were French doors leading out to the garden, and I gestured. "Why don't you go out into the garden?" "Great, thanks," he said as he fumbled in his pocket for his nicotine stick and stepped outside. I closed the door behind him while he lit up. Barry absolutely hated cigarettes. The smoke, the smell disgusted him. It did me too. I'd never been a smoker, but Barry had when he was younger, so you'd think he'd be more tolerant. Although I've heard that often ex-smokers can be more averse than non-smokers. Anyway, Barry eventually came into the office. "Where is he?" I pointed to the garden where Johnny was happily puffing away. Barry frowned, then went out to meet him. And to his credit, the handsome actor put out his cigarette. While they sat in the garden, a PA, Ryan, brought a tray of refreshments into the office and put it on the coffee table. I think he was disappointed that Mr. Depp was outside. "Why don't you tell them that drinks have arrived?" I told Ryan. He smiled and eagerly opened the French doors and made his announcement. Then both Barry and Johnny came into the office and sat down. I knew this was my cue to go to the general office upstairs while they had their meeting. Toback arrived the following day and was staying in the guest room not far from the office, while I had a room in the house. Now, with Johnny Depp secured in the role, to the delight of Warner Brothers as well as Barry and everyone else involved, it was all systems go. As usual, while Barry and Toback threw around story ideas, I incorporated them into the script. One day, I delivered pages to Toback in the guest room, and this overweight man came to the door wearing nothing but a pair of striped underwear. It wasn't a nice sight in the middle of the day or any other time for that matter, and especially since we were going to work on the pages together. "Come in," he said. As I cautiously stepped into the room, suddenly there was a news flash on the television. John F. Kennedy Jr.'s small plane had crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, and he, his wife Carolyn, and his sister-in-law Lauren were missing. Most people know exactly where they were when tragedies of this enormity occur. And I had the misfortune of being in the company of a revolting, half-naked James Toback on the day JFK Jr. died. Next time, looping movies and meeting a Brando. Thanks for listening.